Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Alex Mazzarisi, and I'm an outreach specialist here at the AAMC. I'm joined today by my two AAMC colleagues, Tony Mancuso, who is a communication and outreach senior specialist, and Laura Siegel, who is an aspiring docs and senior web content specialist. And Tony is going to start us off. Laura is going to start us off.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura, and I'm really excited today to be here to share with you all this information. So throughout this presentation, we're going to share a lot of things with you about applying to medical school, and it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. But first, just to give you some context, I want to share with you a little bit of background about the AAMC and our mission statement. As you can see here, our mission is to serve and lead the academic medicine community to improve the health of all. And some members of the AAMC include U.S. and Canadian medical schools, major teaching hospitals and health systems, and academic societies. Okay, as you move through this process, you may initially envision that your timeline looks like this: neat, orderly, and linear. But the reality is that your path may take different twists and turns along the way, and that's totally normal. There isn't one right or wrong path to medical school. Everyone's path is unique. For the purposes of our presentation, we'll follow a path for students matriculating into medical school in 2022. We're going to discuss getting experience, preparing for the MCAT, choosing your medical schools, applying, and paying for school. Just keep in mind there's no certain timeline or order that you have to complete the requirements in. Many students talk about the value of getting experience in the health professions, like shadowing, volunteering, working in a lab, or being a medical scribe. Let's look at some ways you can gain experience prior to applying to medical school. This is Mike, a med student at the John A. Burns School of Medicine in Hawaii. As a volunteer EMT and firefighter, Mike saw firsthand how people in rural communities were relying on emergency services like 911 for healthcare, as opposed to using the services of a primary care physician. Mike's experience as an EMT and firefighter was tremendously valuable and impacted his decision to go into medicine. But you may be wondering, how these experiences impact your application and how to communicate them. In addition to GPA and test scores, many medical schools are moving to a competency-based admissions process, meaning that they evaluate you based on you. They consider your experiences, goals, and your proficiency in 15 core competencies that demonstrate your preparedness for medical school. But what is a competency, and how do you demonstrate it? After hearing those questions from applicants and pre-health advisors, we created the Anatomy of an Applicant website. It defines these 15 core competencies that medical schools look for in applicants, and it gives you tools and examples for how to develop the competencies. This website, which you'll see a screenshot of here on the right-hand side, it shows stories of medical students like Mike, and it shares how they demonstrated the competencies on their application. Each student profile also features perspectives from the student's pre-health advisor and from the admissions officers who accepted them. We also developed a free Anatomy of an Applicant self-assessment guide, which features tools, tips, and worksheets so you can organize your thoughts and reflections on how you're demonstrating the competencies during your journey to medical school. Another way to hear directly from students is through our Aspiring Doc section of the website. Here you'll find fact sheets, articles, and inspiring stories from accepted med school students. Some of our most popular fact sheets are on topics like what it's like to see a patient for the first time, how do I know medicine is right for me, and tips for making the most of a gap year. I also highly recommend you check out the Aspiring Docs blog, which features blog posts from pre-meds, medical students, residents, and physicians with personal stories about their path to medicine or life as a physician. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tony, who will talk about some more specific ways you can gain experience.
Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Mancuso, and I'm the Communications and Outreach Senior Specialist for the Summer Health Professions Education Program. Many students talk about the value of getting hands-on experience in the health professions, like shadowing, volunteering, working in a lab, or being a medical scribe. Some students find these experiences from their colleges, and there are also great pipeline programs that offer opportunities to get that experience, one of them being the Summer Health Professions Education Program, or SHPEP. Applications will open this year on November 1st, so you'll have time to review our website, shpep.org, to make an informed decision. So what is SHPEP? SHPEP is a free 6-week career enrichment program. It is located at several different universities across the country and includes free housing, meals, and travel. It gives participants first-hand experience of what it's like to work in the health professions. Students can choose up to 3 health career tracks, including medicine, dentistry, nursing, optometry, pharmacy, physical therapy, physician assistant, and public health. And you can participate at one of our 12 program sites, which are Columbia University, University of Florida, University of California, Los Angeles and Charles R. Drew University, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, University of Iowa, University of Nebraska, Howard University, University of Alabama, University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, Western University of Health Sciences, University of Louisville, and the University of Washington. To apply to SHPEP, you must be a college freshman or sophomore at the time of application. Please note that your credits cannot exceed 60. AP credits are not counted within this total. You must have a minimum overall college GPA of 2.5. You must be a citizen, a permanent resident, or have been granted DACA status by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And lastly, you cannot have participated in the program. With that being said, why should students apply? SHPEP scholars will receive academic enrichment in the basic sciences, a $600 stipend, and attend the program without cost, guidance from admissions officers and health professionals, and students that are interested in pursuing health professions as well. You're also going to gain exposure from potential career pathways. You're going to meet other college students from across the United States, including Puerto Rico, who are interested in the health professions. Laura, could you please tell us some other ways that students get experience?
Yes. In addition to SHPEP and shadowing a doctor, here are some additional ways you can gain experience. I also highly recommend you check out the AAMC website to see further resources. So, when you're ready to begin the application process, you will see it is comprised of several different steps, such as preparing for the MCAT, choosing which schools to apply to, filling out your medical school applications, and covering expenses related to the application process. Now, let's take a moment to see what one physician has said about the application process. Although Rose was initially worried about not having a perfect GPA or a high enough MCAT score, she told us, "During interviews, admissions faculty were more interested in learning about my strengths and the strategies I used for overcoming challenges." Her advice to applicants is to choose schools whose missions align with your own. And keeping that in mind, just like every applicant is different and has their own story and experiences, each medical school is different and has its own mission and culture. You can view each school's mission statement as well as a ton of other information for free with the AAMC's Medical School Admission Requirements website, also known as MSAR. Another great resource at your disposal is the Official Guide to Medical School Admissions, a guidebook that outlines the admissions process as well as medical career options, preparing for medical school, study tips, and information on how admissions decisions are made. We recommend taking a look at this resource early in the process, as it also includes several helpful worksheets to make sure you are on track. Again, just to reiterate, when choosing a medical school, there are many factors to consider. And with the MSAR website, you can search for schools by location, median MCAT or GPA, review school-specific data, save and rank favorites, save notes on each school, and review pre-medical coursework. And speaking of MCAT scores, I'm going to hand it off to Tony to share more details about the MCAT exam.
Thank you, Laura, for the warm handoff. And let's really just take a deep dive into the MCAT exam. MCAT stands for the Medical College Admission Test and has been part of the medical school admissions process for over 90 years. As you prepare for this exam, remember it is just one part of your overall application to medical school and one piece of many that admissions committees will use to evaluate your readiness for their programs. So let's talk about the exam in further detail, and let's talk about some things that you need to be aware of. So what is the MCAT exam? The MCAT exam is a standardized computer-based multiple choice exam taken at a testing center. Almost all U.S. and some Canadian medical schools will require you to submit recent MCAT scores with your application. The exam tests your knowledge and skills medical school students, faculty, and residents have identified as key prerequisites for success in medical school and the practice of medicine. It specifically assesses your problem-solving and critical thinking skills, as well as your knowledge of scientific concepts and principles necessary to study medicine. The content on the MCAT exam is divided into 4 multiple choice sections. There is no writing section on the exam. The 4 sections include 2 natural science sections, a behavioral and social science section, and a critical analysis section. The sections test content found in introductory biology, physics, psychology and sociology, general and organic chemistry, and first semester biochemistry. Please note the exam takes about 7.5 hours to complete, which includes everything from checking out and taking breaks. MCAT scores are released 30 to 35 days after you take the exam. You will receive 5 scores, 4 individual section scores and 1 total score. Your section scores will be added together to create your total score. The ranges for each section and the total score are listed on the screen. Medical schools receive all scores. Each MCAT exam you choose to have scored will be reported to the medical schools. You are not able to pick and choose which scores you are able to send to medical schools, and if you choose to void your exam or not show up on test day, medical schools do not see any record of those exams. Only you will know that. Voids and no-shows count towards testing limits over the course of the testing year and your lifetime limits. One question I always receive from Premeds is, when should I take the MCAT exam? My answer is typically, when you're ready, but I think what you should be asking is, what should I be thinking about before I register? Here are a few questions to think about to help you determine when you might be ready. When do you want to apply to medical school? Many examinees take their MCAT exam in the same year that they are also applying to medical school. For example, if you wanted to go to med school in the fall of 2022, consider taking the exam in 2021. Are you familiar with the MCAT content? Do you understand it? Do you feel comfortable with it? The MCAT exam doesn't have any required course you need to take before registering, but if you feel you need more time to prepare based on what is tested on the exam, consider a date later in the testing year. Will you need to retake the exam? No one likes thinking about taking the exam, but if you think you will need to test more than once during a calendar year, think about making your first attempt earlier in the year. This allows you time to receive your scores, decide on whether you want to retest or not, and then find an available seat later in the testing year. A few other things to keep in mind is that there are a limited number of times you can take the exam. In a single testing year, you're only permitted to take the exam 3 times. Over 2 consecutive years, you can test up to 4 times, and in your lifetime, you're able to test a total of 7 times. As you think about when you take your exam, you're also probably thinking, But how do I prepare for it? With busy schedules, classes, activities, it can be hard to balance it all. Darrell Fields, a current medical school student from the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health, encourages students to develop good study skills. There is no perfect way to study, so experiment until you find one. Darrell makes a great observation and comment. As you prepare, it is important to remember that there isn't a right or wrong way to prepare. To help you get started in your preparation, one way is to create a study plan that keeps you on track and organized. The AAMC has a free 6-step guide to help you do just that, which includes worksheets and suggested resources to help you throughout your preparation. It also includes some suggestion of study strategies you can begin to employ now and throughout your preparation. Also, it can be helpful to see how others tackle the exam. We developed a resource that highlights different past examinees' study schedules, strategies, and tips for how they prepared and what they learned. Furthermore, we have other resources and practice products to help you throughout the process. Here you can see most of the resources the AAMC has available for free or at a low cost. These include study resources such as the Khan Academy MCAT collection and practice sets, full-length exams, and inspiring stories. Now let's turn our attention to the application itself. When you're ready to apply to medical school, you can apply to more than 150 programs with just one application using AAMC's American Medical College Application Service, or AMCAS. On average, applicants apply to up to 17 medical schools using the application. So let's talk about how it works. AMCAS is a little like the Common App many of you use when applying to college. You will complete one application. AMCAS will verify and process your submitted application and then send it to your designated medical schools electronically. AMCAS also distributes your letters of evaluation and your MCAT scores directly to the medical schools as well. To process your application, you would need to submit your application and all official transcripts from each post-secondary institution in the U.S. and Canada you have attended, regardless if credit was earned. MCAT scores and letters of evaluation are not needed to process your application. Those can be added after you've submitted the application. So here's a look at the typical application timeline, which we refer to as the AMCAS application cycle. The AMCAS cycle is 1 year ahead of the current calendar year. The application cycle corresponds to when you hope to start medical school. For the 2021 application cycle, the application will open May 4th of 2020. Submission will start May 28th, 2020, and data transmission will be June 26, 2020. Once your processed application is sent, medical schools will begin to review your application, which typically involves secondary applications and in-person interviews as you go through the process. Keep in mind, medical schools admissions are rolling, so submitting your applications earlier rather than later is a good idea. You will need to keep track of your medical school's AMCAS application deadlines, as this is the date your application needs to be submitted. Official transcripts must be received by AMCAS within 14 calendar days from a medical school deadline. And these deadlines are detailed in the medical school section of the application as well on our website. The information requested of you in the AMCAS application is relatively straightforward. However, it's very detailed. So know that you're completing your application is going to take time. All specific deadline dates and any application cycle and much more information about the AMCAS application is on our website at aamc.org/AMCAS. Deirdre from the University of Virginia School of Medicine says, you don't have to be a perfect applicant in every category, but the personal statement is very important. So let's take a closer look at the application sections. The AMCAS application has 9 sections listed here and again asks for a range of information about yourself. Some sections are self-explanatory, but those highlighted in green require a bit more time and thought. In the coursework section, you'll enter every college-level course you have attempted or completed. I recommend requesting an official transcript from each post-secondary institution in the U.S. and Canada that you've attended for yourself when completing this section. Please list courses as they appear on the official transcript that the course was taken. For the work and activities section, that section is designed to give you the opportunity to highlight your work experience, extracurricular activities, awards, honors, or publications. You may add up to 15 entries in this section and select 3 as your most meaningful, which you'll be asked to reflect in writing. Please enter only significant experiences. It's about quality, not quantity. Your personal comments essay or your personal statement will also take some time to draft and finalize. As Deirdre pointed out, this is an important part of the application because it is really your first chance to convey to medical schools why medicine. But remember, there isn't a formula for your essay or the right way to craft it. It should be unique to you and your story. Some questions you may want to consider while drafting this essay are, why have you selected the field of medicine? What motivates you to learn about medicine? What do you want medical schools to know about you that hasn't been disclosed in any other section of the application? In addition, you may wish to include information such as special hardships, challenges, or obstacles that may have influenced your educational pursuits, or include commentary on significant fluctuations in your academic record which are not explained anywhere else on your application. We have a bunch of video tutorials on our site, a YouTube channel, an applicant guide, and lots of FAQs to help you navigate the application. We also have a fantastic contact center who are available to help you answer questions throughout the application process. Now, the process of applying to medical school has a financial component. AMCAS, MCAT, and MSAR have an associated cost with them. However, the AAMC firmly believes that the cost of applying to medical school should not deter you from becoming a doctor. So that is why there is this program, the Fee Assistance Program. Before registering for your MCAT exam or applying to medical school, we encourage you to explore the AAMC's Fee Assistance Program. This program assists those who, without financial assistance, would be unable to take the MCAT exam, apply to medical schools with the AMCAS application, or access some of our other AAMC resources. To be eligible for the Fee Assistance Program, you must be a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, a lawful permanent resident of the United States, have been granted DACA status, or awaiting refugee status approval by the U.S. government and have a U.S. EAD card. Approval for the Fee Assistance Program is tied directly to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services poverty level guidelines. Unlike some federally funded programs, the Fee Assistance Program does not draw distinctions based on your dependent or independent tax status. Therefore, parental financial information and supporting tax documentation are required. It's free to apply for this program, so we encourage you to apply. For more information, review the website, review the Fee Assistance Program essentials when determining your eligibility, and get answers to the questions that you need. Now, there are several benefits once you're approved for fee assistance. One of them being, reduced MCAT fees. Normally, the exam is $320. If you're approved for fee assistance, that fee is reduced to $130. You receive free MCAT prep materials. Currently, all fee assistance program awardees will receive the MCAT online-only bundle, which is valued at approximately $268. A free subscription to the MSAR for up to 2 years, which is valued at $36. A waiver for the cost of AMCAS application and AMCAS fees for up to 20 medical school designations, which is about a $970 value. And additionally, if you're planning to apply for MCAT testing accommodations, you will have access to an $800 stipend for an updated psychoeducation or medical reevaluation if it's needed to support your accommodations application. If you were to use all of the benefits available to you with the fee assistance program, you will save over $2,000. Please note that the benefits are not retroactive. So before registering for the MCAT exam or applying to medical school with AMCAS, be sure to be approved for the fee assistance program, as you will not be refunded the difference. While we're on the topic of money, I want to provide you with some resources that you can look at now. These resources from FIRST will help you prepare to pay for medical school and help you manage your finances during medical school. Deepika from Rush Medical College of Rush University provides some good financial tips. Her personal recommendations for managing finances are: get to know your school's financial aid team. Be proactive in getting all of your questions answered. Financial aid counselors are there to help guide you. Track your expenses. It's a vital life skill that will serve you well in the future. Know what you borrowed and who you borrowed from. It sounds basic, but it's essential to know this for repayment. In addition to following Deepika's advice, I would also recommend becoming familiar with the FIRST website. This is where you can go to find out about your options for financing the cost of your medical education, and here you'll also learn about money management and loan repayment. FIRST is free and will equip you with the tools and tips to help you borrow wisely when it comes time, and also it'll help you repay your loans responsibly. Yes, it's common to borrow student loans to attend medical school. As a matter of fact, based on data from the class of 2018, 71% reported that they graduated with debt from medical school expenses. The data also shows that the median amount of debt for the 2018 class was over $200,000, and 51% of students reported having debt is even higher than that. While these numbers may sound intimidating and even overwhelming, it should be noted that student loans are available to finance the cost of medical education. Additionally, there are programs that offer loan forgiveness or repayment assistance. One of the ways to help minimize your financial stress is to learn as much as possible about student aid and funding options. You'll want to use the FIRST search tool, which is a separate search tool from the main website. This search tool specifically searches for financial resources. If you look on the screen, it's highlighted right there for you, so it's easily tracked. You can search keywords like pre-med or resident, or even, budgeting or loan repayment. For right now, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, as she'll go over and explain some of our other resources.
Thank you. So to reiterate, I want to just point out how helpful the FIRST website is. For more detailed information, I highly recommend you check it out. And another point that I would like to highlight is that the AAMC hopes that the FIRST program will allow you to see obtaining medical education as a possibility no matter what your financial concerns. AAMC firmly believes that the cost should not deter you from achieving your goals and aspirations. While medical school may be costly, it is an investment in yourself and your future. Another resource available to you is AAMC's financial wellness website. After creating a personalized account, you can set financial goals, track expenses, complete courses on topics relevant to your life, and calculate the cost of borrowing. There are many different types of financial aid available, including grants, scholarships, and loans. Again, please check out our FIRST website for more information on all these different categories of aid. We recommend that you maximize grants and scholarships before looking into loans. Although, when you look into loans, we also recommend that you maximize federal loans over private loans because sometimes they offer more flexibility in terms of repayment, and they may also offer additional loan forgiveness programs that private lenders may not offer. Another great tool on our website is this fact card that provides a snapshot of key student loan data, including different repayment scenarios. This data was updated for the 2019-2020 school year, and facts are divided into 4 categories: percentage of public and private students with education debt amounts, education debt breakdown, and a breakdown of non-education debt. This tool is available on our website and is free. Finally, last but not least, another resource you might be interested in is our monthly email newsletter called the Premed Navigator. This comes out the first Sunday of every month and features articles on preparing for and applying to medical school. Each issue also includes a list of important dates in one place. For example, upcoming MCAT test dates, AMCAS application deadlines, pre-med recruitment fairs, and deadlines for pathway programs like SHPEP. This is a free resource that you can subscribe to today, and you can also check out past articles on our website. Over the course of this presentation, we've referenced a lot of website links, so for your convenience, you may want to take a screenshot of this slide. It has links to everything we referenced all in one handy place. In conclusion, I encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter so you'll be the first to know about new resources we may develop in the future. And also, be sure to visit the student web pages on aamc.org for more information. Now, let's open the floor up for questions.
Okay, so the first question we have is, how many recommendation letters make you a competitive applicant? Is it better if all of them are from your science professors?
Okay, it's about the quality and not the quantity. The biggest thing I can say is when it comes to letters and letter requirements, it's really good to use the MSAR because each school requires a different set of letters, right? Some schools may require 3, some schools may require 5, and there are different types of letters, like you were saying, like some written by science professors and some maybe in the liberal arts. So, making sure that you're meeting their requirements is the first step, and the MSAR is the biggest thing with that. So just making sure you're meeting their requirements is going to be my answer for that.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Our next question is, if I lack experience but plan to go to a master's program, how would that look for medical schools?
Well, as far as like lacking experience and things like that, there are different ways that you can gain experience, and that's really what I kind of want to talk to here. So if we go to the previous slide, if you look at the bottom right, the option set, the link that's there is Summer Enrichment Opportunities. You can look for any type of experience there. Now, I know early in the presentation we were talking about the Summer Health Professions Education Program, which is a program designated for college freshmen and sophomore students, right? For those who don't qualify, they can use this link right here to look to see what opportunities are available to them. Another great website that I highly recommend is explorehealthcareers.org. It gives them, other opportunities as well, just to get that either clinical exposure or research experience.
Great. And our next question is, can you apply to medical school before getting your MCAT results?
Yeah, so you're able to submit your MCAS application without receiving your MCAT score. Once the MCAT score releases and your application is processed, your score is sent to the medical schools as an update to your application.
Great. The next question is, are there any programs like SHPEP for students taking a gap year?
All right, well, as we have right here, that Summer Enrichment Opportunities link right there at the bottom right, definitely is a great place to start. And also explorehealthcareers.org. I definitely want to make sure, you get all the opportunities that you need if you don't qualify for SHPEP.
Great. The next question is there a similar program to SHPEP for college juniors or seniors?
Well, as mentioned, just make sure you visit that link right there.
Okay. Great. The next question is, I have already asked for my letters of recommendation. where do I tell my recommenders to send the letter to? Some of them have done it already.
Okay, so if you're trying to apply for the 2021 cycle, you should not have them send letters in. You can only accept, AMCAS will only accept the letter if you've initiated that application, right? So you have to initiate the 2021 application prior to sending letters to AMCAS.
Great. The next question is, if we want to apply 2020 to enter 2021, when do you believe is the latest we should take the MCAT?
Ultimately, you do take the exam when you're ready. The biggest thing I can say, though, is when trying to determine when's the right time for you, one of the other questions you want to ask yourself is, when does that school need that MCAT exam score by? Each school runs on a different timeline, and the biggest thing I can say is, when you've done research on one medical school, is that you've only done research on that one medical school. They're all completely different. So if you plan on applying to multiple schools, try to figure out when those schools need those deadlines, when they need that MCAT score by, what's that deadline, and then from there you can make your decision based off that. Like, one thing I will also recommend is, for this type of question, I would highly recommend that you speak with your pre-health advisor. They're going to help you develop that game plan that you're going to need in order to be successful.
Great. The next question is, most schools on the MSAR list their median MCAT score and median GPA. If my GPA is lower than the listed median GPA, how should I adjust for the MCAT score that I need to get in order to have a better chance of being accepted to the school?
So I would say that a lot of medical schools look at more than just GPA and MCAT. If your MCAT score is a little bit lower than you had anticipated, that's really okay. I would recommend that you go to the AAMC.org website and you look at the Anatomy of an Applicant website, because this is going to demonstrate how we have about a dozen profiles available right now where we interview students who were accepted to medical school, and we also interview the student's pre-health advisor as well as a admissions representative that played a role in accepting them. And many of these students demonstrate how they've developed, how they've shared how they have showed the 15 different core competencies in their application rather than just their GPA and their MCAT score. So I would highly recommend looking at that resource, because a lot of schools now are judging applicants in a more holistic way, and a lot of them have adopted these competency-based admissions. I would also recommend looking at the MSAR website. That will give you more information as to each school's requirements.
Great. Thank you, Laura. The next question is, how many letters of recommendation do you suggest we bring to AMCAS?
Well, you can have up to 10 letters in your application, right? And that's the best part, right? You can choose which type of letter, whether it's an individual letter, a committee letter, or a letter packet. That being said, for that specific letter, you can then assign that letter to whichever medical schools you would want, right? So you can pick and choose which letters go to which medical schools to make things easier for you. Now, again, when it comes to this, I would highly recommend looking at the MSAR, because they're going to be able to tell you that resource is really going to be able to give you that deep dive, like, hey, I need this amount of letters to apply to this school, but I need this amount of letters to apply to this school. Being that you have 10 letter entries within your application, you can actually have a specific letter writer write a letter for a specific program, maybe your top choice as an example, right? And you can have it assigned just to that one school. So it's not that you have 10 letters and all the medical schools are going to receive all 10 letters. No, you can pick and choose whichever ones you want them to go to.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Our next question is, what happens if I take the MCAT for a second time after I have already submitted my AMCAS application? Is there a way to let schools know I plan on retaking the MCAT?
Yes. So so it's a two-part question right there, right? So when you register for that second part of the MCAT exam, when you register for your second MCAT exam, but you've received that first score is going to be automatically associated with the AMCAS application. What you can do on the AMCAS application is list a future MCAT test date which will let medical schools know when to expect your MCAT score. It gives them like that heads up, like, hey, definitely, that's what we need to do. Once that score releases, and your application is processed, that score will then go to that medical school as an update to your application, and you don't need to do anything on your end in order to make that happen. That's automatic on our end.
Great, thank you, Tony. Laura's going to take our next question. The next question is, I have an online business undergrad, and I'm going to take a post-bac in residence starting this fall. Does my undergrad being online hinder my profile? I was in active military at the time and got a 3.9.
This is a great question. We get a lot of questions from students about online courses and online degrees and online programs. Unfortunately, there is not an easy answer for that. Every single medical school decides their own admissions requirements, and they each have different policies on whether or not they take online courses. The first thing I would recommend is to, again, go to the MSAR website and look up all the schools you're interested in, because many of them have that information in their profiles. Secondly, I would recommend going directly to the website of the medical school and/or contacting admissions folks there to ask them directly. The second part of that question, you mentioned that you have previous military experience and you had a very high GPA. I would say they will definitely take account those experiences. They will consider those in your application. Again, a lot of schools are looking at applicants in a much more holistic way, and I would also focus on demonstrating some of the 15 core competencies in your application. And they'll definitely look at your activities and experiences, and that's what I'd recommend.
Great, thank you, Laura. The next question is also for you. How important is research for getting into medical school?
So again, I think the answer is it depends. It depends on which medical schools you are interested in attending, because some of them have a very heavy research focus and others not so much. So again, I would look at the MSAR website, read the profiles of the schools you're interested in, also look directly at the websites of the schools you're interested in, and possibly reach out to some admissions folks there and get their input on that.
Thank you, Laura. We have another question for Tony. How can we get access to the MCAT bundle questions if we have applied to the fee assistance program?
Are you already approved for the fee assistance program? That would be my first question. So assuming yes, and you've been approved, this specific benefit is only awarded once in a lifetime, right? So you won't receive that MCAT Prep online only bundle if you were previously awarded MCAT Prep materials in a previous application year, right? But if this is something new, like this is a new, you're completely, this is your first time applying, this is your first time, being awarded fee assistance. At that point, all you would need to do is just go to the MCAT official prep hub. If you go to amc.org/MCAT prep, you'll be able to access the hub there.
Great, thank you, Tony. Our next question is, how recent do letters of recommendation have to be? Would it be recommended to retake courses to get more recent letters?
As far as letters of evaluation, each school is a little different, and as I said earlier in the presentation, if you've done research on one school, that means you've done research on one school, and they're all completely different. I would reach out to that specific school to see, what is their specific retention policy for letters, or their, how long, not necessarily retention, but how long, you're able to store them on your end until they're no longer valid.
Great, thank you, Tony. The next question is for Laura. How can I find doctors to shadow that will eventually write me letters of recommendation?
I would say if you have a relationship with some of your own doctors or know any doctors, start by asking them. You can also ask teachers, professors, pre-med, or academic advisors if they know any doctors that other students have shadowed in the past. If you're in college, definitely leverage any relationships your school may have with a medical school or hospital on campus. It's also okay to contact hospitals through their volunteer office or search online for local doctors with specialties that interest you. Call their office or email them at least a few weeks before you'd like to begin shadowing. We also have a lot of resources on shadowing on the Aspiring Docs website on aamc.org.
Thank you, Laura. Our next question is, if you do well on the most recent MCAT, however, did subpar in a previous attempt, does this hurt your application?
Medical schools will see all scores, right? You remember, and just remember that the MCAT score is just one piece of that application, right? If you did subpar on the first one, but you did well on the second one, the medical school will be able to see, the increase that was there. And then from there, they're able to make, based on the rest of your application, make a well-informed decision as to what type of impact it will have and how each medical school will review it. I think that's more of a question for the medical schools that you're applying to. The good thing about this fair that we have here is that you can now interact with all these medical schools. So if you have a specific question about, requirements to get in, or MCAT scores, or questions even just like these, I would highly recommend asking those medical schools that you're interested in that are in the fair these same questions.
Thank you. Our next question is, I have printed recommendation letters from doctors and hospitals. Is that good, or do I need to submit them electronically?
So letters can be submitted either through Interfolio, the AMCAS letter writer application, or through standard mail, right? As far as on your end as an applicant, you should not be submitting the letter of evaluation on behalf of your letter writer. The biggest thing I would stress is that confidentiality is a really big thing, in regards to letters and things like that. I would ask your letter writer to submit the letter on your behalf. Now they have those three options. As far as sending letters to AMCAS, please remember that you need to initiate the application before sending letters to AMCAS. Once it's initiated, they can mail the letter, and you would just need to provide your letter writer the letter request form. As far as the other two ways, Interfolio is a service that you would normally pay for, that you could store letters, and processing time for sending letters from Interfolio to AMCAS is about 3 business days, right? As far as the AMCAS letter writer application, it's done, it's an online service that letter writers can submit letters through. That's done immediate, and you'll receive an email as soon as that letter is received. And as far as the standard processing time for mailing letters, it just depends on, how long it takes your letter writer to put the envelope in the mailbox. As far as from there, it can take up to 7 to 10 days, for it to arrive to AMCAS, and then there's an additional 10 business day processing that we need to keep in account for whenever any type of materials are received. So, it's actually recommended or preferred if they're able to use the AMCAS letter writer application, just because it's easier on you, the applicant, and it's one less thing you need to worry about, if possible.
Thank you, Tony. Our next question is international shadowing seen as equivalent to shadowing in the U.S.? I'm studying abroad in England, and I'm wondering whether shadowing hours I obtain here will be looked at equivalently to U.S. shadowing.
So for this question, I would say the number one thing to keep in mind is the quality of the experience. If you are really just shadowing physicians, I think medical schools would look upon that activity internationally and domestically as having the same value. You want to make sure that you're really getting a meaningful experience. So I think that that's a great activity to pursue. However, if you are considering an international healthcare experience that's a little bit more than shadowing, you want to make sure that you really do your research first. Being a clinician in training means not overstepping your level of training, misrepresenting who you are to patients, or doing things that you aren't sanctioned or licensed to do. You want to avoid experiences where you aren't properly supervised. We did just have a great article on this in the Premed Navigator that is probably the second one that will pop up on our website, so I recommend checking that out. But in terms of shadowing, again, it's going to be the quality of the experience, and can you demonstrate what you've learned, how you've grown from that experience in your application materials.
Our next question is, if I have a disability, at which point should I mention this during the application cycle? Do I have to mention this?
So, so typically, so let's take a complete step back really quickly, right? If you have an impairment or a disability that you feel, you're not able to compete or say things under the same conditions as maybe somebody else, the MCAT exam offers accommodations. Typically, they have a 60-day review process, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as those scores aren't annotated or flagged or anything like that, meaning that, medical schools will not know that you test under those conditions. Now, as far as the AAMC, that's not information that we're going to provide to the medical schools in any which way, shape, or form, because we want to make sure that it's a fair and consistent process for each and every applicant. Now, what you decide to say to a medical school is completely different. As far as navigating that path, I would highly recommend that you speak with your pre-health advisor to figure out when is the right time to disclose that information.
Okay. Our next question is, does the nature of your research matter? For example, my research deals with anthropology and medical anthropology. So, for your application.
I think that any research activities that you engage in should be ones that are very meaningful to you. Don't just participate in research to check off a box. So if that particular subject has meaning for you, then I say go for it. With that being said, they will be looking at you as a well-rounded applicant. So if this particular research experience isn't very science-heavy, or if it doesn't have a sort of lab component, later on you may want to look at some other ways that you can demonstrate those skills. But if this particular research experience involving anthropology really calls to you and you can speak about that in an interview or in your personal statements, then it could just be a puzzle piece of your application. So, yes.
Our next question is, if some prerequisites were completed 6 years ago, over 6 years ago, would that weaken an individual's application? Would the applicant have to retake those courses?
So medical schools have a recency admissions requirement as well when it comes to these prereqs, right? So, it sounds like you may have, it sounds like maybe you're a career changer, you finished school, you may have gone on into your career and then came back to it. That's kind of the sense I'm getting just based on the question. But, the first thing you need to do is figure that piece of it out, right? To see if your courses are still valid for applying to medical school. And again, each medical school has their own requirements and they're completely different. But that's the first thing I'd want to check with the schools that I'm applying to. Now, there is a chance that you have to retake those courses, and that's not to scare you off from applying to medical school or anything like that, but I do want to give you the truth there. Definitely check with the schools, and then also speak with your pre-health advisor. If you do not have a pre-health advisor, and let's say you're more of like a career changer and you're not in school anymore, the website that you can go to is naahp.org. That's N as in November, A as in Alpha, A as in Alpha, H as in Hotel, P as in Papa.org. They're also represented here as a participant in the virtual fair. If you go to the main exhibit hall, you're able to select NAAHP. I highly recommend that you reach out to them for guidance because it sounds like you need more of that advising help moving forward.
Thank you, Tony. Our next question is, what happens if you do not have a pre-health advisor? Who should you talk to?
Similarly, along those same lines, if you don't have a pre-health advisor, I would go to the NAAHP website. Stands for National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions. They have a tool where they can pair you with an advisor. Again, also as Tony mentioned, they are part of the virtual fair today, so I definitely recommend stopping by their booth and chatting with one of their reps.
Our next question is, if I took the MCAT in 2015, will medical schools still see that score, even though it's been more than 3 years and it's considered no longer valid?
Well, medical schools will see all MCAT scores regardless of when you test. That's just one of those things. They will see that score regardless if it's no longer valid for their admission process. They will still have access to it.
Okay, great. Our next question is, what is the best option for clinical experience for someone who is a non-traditional student / career changer?
So I will address this question by saying there isn't one best option as a way to gain experience. But I will say I would honestly go to the AAMC website and check out Anatomy of an Applicant and also look at the Aspiring Docs blog. And if you Google Career Changer AAMC, you will find that we have a wealth of stories from folks who are career changers, who have successfully been accepted to medical school, and especially Anatomy of an Applicant, we interview the student, the pre-health advisor, and the person in admissions who was partially responsible for them being accepted. And you'll be able to tell how they often leverage their non-traditional experience as an asset. So again, I don't have a specific one that I will say is best, but if you read a lot of those stories, you'll find some really good examples on there.
Thank you, Laura. Our next question is, how do we verify experiences we put on our application / personal statement?
The one thing I recommend for the work and activity section is for applicants, before they list that so for each work and activity, each applicant, applicants can list a contact for that activity, right? Whoever you list as a contact, even before you list them, I'd recommend reaching out to that person, letting them know, hey, this is what I'm going to put in my application. I'm going to say I did this amount of shadowing hours, and this is where I did it, and here are the dates for it, right? You give them all the logistics and make sure that their contact information is correct. Medical schools may reach out to whoever you list as a contact for that work and activity to verify that information. Just make sure that my personal advice is pass it by whoever that person is, so like that both of you are on the same page moving forward. Great.
Our next question is, how many months in advance do students typically start studying for the MCAT? And I can actually take this question, Tony. Based on students who have responded to a recent survey that we conducted, on average, examinees spend about 20 hours a week for about 3 months preparing for the exam. But it's important to remember that this is just an average, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach to prepare for the MCAT, and what works for you might not work well for someone else, and vice versa. And that was our last question, actually. So thank you all for attending, and we really appreciate your time, and we hope that this was very informative for you. And if you have any further questions, feel free to send us a message on Twitter at AAMC_MCAT or AAMC Premed.
Also, you can visit us in the AAMC Virtual Fair booth and ask us more questions there. Thank you guys so much for sticking through the presentation.
Thank you, everyone.